This week on The Perfect Scam. So they drive up to your house?
They drive up to the house, 3 men. They come in my house. They open the box on the floor of my living room and count. They were polite. They didn't say hardly anything. They left with my money. And I remember thinking, they're walking out of my house with half of my life savings.
Welcome back to The Perfect Scam. I'm your host, Bob Sullivan. There's a dangerous new trend in scams, one we want to tell you about right away. We tend to think of online crime as virtual, thefts in which the criminal and the victims are miles away, maybe continents away. But increasingly, in-person, real-life meetings have become a part of online crime. Money mules are being sent into homes and driveways to pick up payments. And that adds a very, very dangerous element to these crimes. Tragically, one unwitting money mule was shot and killed recently by someone who was the target of a grandparent scam. Today's story involves a situation like that. Criminals arrived at our victim's home twice, in this case to pick up a pizza box-sized cachet of gold bars. But in an amazing twist, well, this story has at least a partly happy ending that's almost hard to believe. But it comes as a very serious cautionary tale. We hope you'll tell your loved ones about it. Meet Lori English, who was happily enjoying her hobbies during early retirement when our story starts. Hobbies like singing and playing the guitar.
I'm going back someday, come what may to Blue Bayou, where the folks are fine and the world is mine on Blue Bayou.
Oh my God, I'm melting over here. That was great.
Aw,
That was fantastic.
thank you.
Big Linda Ronstadt fan, of course. So
Yes, huge.
Lori lives with her pets in Ohio.
I'm in Pataskala, Ohio.
So it's in Licking County, right?
Yes,
So where is Licking County?
it is in central Ohio.
So it's east of Columbus, right? By like an hour or so?
Yeah, no, actually, we are pretty much attached to Columbus at this
Oh,
point.
okay.
We're about from Columbus proper to Pataskala proper, it's about a half an hour.
Then Columbus has spread since the last time I've gotten there, I suppose.
It's grown by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, I want people to understand where you are, because while you are now part of Columbus, it's still a pretty rural area where you live exactly, right?
Where I live exactly, yes, it is rural. I'm out in the country on 13 acres.
Sounds very beautiful. I know that you worked really hard and saved up so you could retire in your early 50s. What was your job before then?
Administrative assistant.
You were an administrative assistant.
Did that for over 25 years, yeah.
And saved up and you were able to retire. And then, so how have you been spending your time since you retired?
I have been doing a lot of the things that you put off when you're working, like being lazy. And I'm on a horse farm and I have my own animals and pets. I work with them quite a bit. Just spending time with friends and visiting family, and yeah.
And as you now know, she also plays guitar and sings. What genre?
Oh gosh, everything. It's easier to say what I don't do.
Good for you.
I'm pretty much stuck in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah, give me some band names.
Linda Ronstadt, Bonnie Raitt, Badfinger, Chicago, Journey, Fleetwood Mac, Patsy Cline's one of my favorites, Etta James, yeah, all kinds of different stuff. And those fishing boats with their sails afloat, if I could only see, like familiar sunrise used to be ours, how happy I'd be.
It was a normal day of taking care of things around the house and wondering about her next music appearance when a call came that would change Lori's life.
I know that I took the call in the kitchen, so I was probably, doing something domestic in the kitchen.
Making lunch or something, right?
Probably, yeah.
What's the first thing the person says?
First of all, the screen on my phone said Social Security Administration, so I picked it up. And the gentleman said, "My name is so-and-so. I'm with the Social Security Administration. We have information that your Social Security number has been compromised, and we need to take action immediately."
Oh my God. So
Yeah.
what's your first thought?
And my first thought was, oh my God. And then he said, "Your name is being used on accounts that are being used to launder money and to traffic drugs through the major cartels."
Traffic drugs, major cartels. Wow.
Yeah, I was in that immediately. I'm scared.
Lori is very scared, but the person on the phone tells her to stay on the line, that help is on the way.
And before I could say anything, he passed me on to another person. And this guy said, "My name is so-and-so. I'm with the DEA. My badge number is blah, blah, blah. We are working hard to determine what's going on with your accounts. And in the meantime, while we're doing that, I'm going to connect you with a gentleman with the Department of the Treasury who is going to help us clear your name, because we know this is identity fraud."
And so another person takes over the conversation. He says his name is Stephen Collins.
So I talked to Stephen, and he repeated what the other two had said, and he said that we need to liquidate my funds and secure them with the Department of Treasury. So if I'm indicted, the feds can't freeze my assets and take them.
But he wants you to liquidate your funds.
Right. And I said, "What does that mean?" And he said, "We need to get all of your money out. There are various ways to do that. And we'll take your money and keep it for you safe at the Treasury Department. And that way the feds can't take it if you're indicted. If you're indicted, if you're indicted, if you're indicted." Oh man, I was scared to death.
If you're indicted, if you're indicted. The words keep repeating in her head over and over. So Lori listens carefully as Stephen tells her what steps she has to take to protect herself and her money.
First thing he told me to do was to go to the bank and take all the money out of my savings account. He asked me what my balances were, and I did that. And then he told me to put that in a safe place. So I did that. And all this time he's telling me, "You cannot tell anybody about this, because not only will it hamper the investigation, but it will also affect your safety." Oh my freaking God. And I said, "Do these people know where I am? Am I safe? Should I be scared?" He said, "Yeah, you should be scared, but don't worry, Lori. We've got eyes on you all the time now. And we are monitoring your phone calls and your emails." And he said, "I got your back. We got you."
Oh boy. But when he said the word safety, that took it to another place for you, right?
It did. It really did. And then when he says they've got eyes on me all the time and local law enforcement is involved and aware, why would I was so scared at that point. I'm thinking, okay, I've got to do what he tells me because he's the only one who can keep me safe. It's
and
horrible.
just for some context, I mean, you are in a rural area of Ohio, and at this point you're by yourself, right?
Yes.
So this is pretty freaky.
Yes.
So,
and knowing that they have my information and my address, and I don't know who these people are, and are they coming for me?
Lori is so concerned about all that's going on that she even makes contingency plans for her pets.
Because I didn't know what was, I'm thinking about things like, what if the feds show up at my door and take me away? Who's going to take care of my animals? I had to get my affairs in order and try not to look suspicious about it.
What were you going to do with them?
Luckily I have in my will already who takes care, who would get my dogs, who would get my cats, or any other animals I may have. So I had that knowledge that they would be cared for. I also knew that I would be able to talk to people. Wherever they were going to take me, I'd be able to make phone calls to get that taken care of.
But so a friend or a neighbor or something was going to take responsibility for your pets. Wow.
Yeah, my family would have taken them.
Almost immediately, Lori empties her bank accounts as instructed. Do you remember roughly how much it was?
It was only a few grand.
And where did you put that money?
I put that in my safe here at home.
Stephen checks in with Lori as she empties her bank accounts. He says he's continuing to work her case, continuing to try to clear her name, and he keeps on checking in with her day after day.
We spoke every day, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day. And he
Wow.
was asking me, what are your plans for today? Are you going to be going out? Give me a call when you get back home. Do whatever you need to do, but just, kind of give me an idea where you are and what you're doing.
That's just crazy. So at like what, 9:30 in the morning, he would call and say, "Good morning. What's your
hmm
plans?"
Yep, exactly. How are you
Wow.
doing? Do you need anything? Can I help you? And he was very much a compassionate character.
When he said, "Do you need anything?" Did you ever respond with, I mean, how would you respond to that?
I would, I tried to keep it as uplifting as I could. I would say, yeah, I need these people off my back. I need you to clear my
Right.
name.
But to do that, she's going to have to keep moving her money around. Lori has a Roth IRA, and a few days after she empties her bank account, Stephen gives Lori the bad news that she's going to have to dig into that Roth account too. He tells her,
You need to go and withdraw half of your Roth money and go buy gold.
withdraw half your Roth money and go buy gold? It's all so confusing, but Lori is desperate to get this all over with, so she schedules an appointment with her financial advisor.
And beforehand, Stephen Collins told me, you cannot tell him what what you're doing this for real, because we're investigating them too. You can't compromise the investigation. So just tell him you're going to invest in gold. That's what I told him. And he said, Lori, is somebody asking you to do this? And I said, no. I said, I just want to I just want to do something different, change my portfolio. And I had to lie and convince him.
And so how much money was this about?
This was about 250 grand.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this is money that you had been depositing for 20,
40
30,
years.
40 years. 40 years.
40 years of work.
Once Lori gets the cash into her account, her next step is to...
Well, I had to find a place to buy that much gold. I found a place close by and called them on the phone. Or no, I went into the store and talked to the guy, and they really didn't bat an eye about it, because at that time there was a run on gold and people were buying that amount of gold regularly. Stephen said that there would be an undercover officer in the store with me, and there would be one in the parking lot. He said, we have eyes on you. You'll be perfectly safe. Don't worry.
Wow. So you think someone's following you into the store, basically?
Yeah. So I'm in the store, and about 30 seconds later, a guy in jeans and a ball cap comes in. And I'm thinking, okay, that must be him. So they take me in the back room and I count it, and I left. And the manager walked me to my car.
Now, I don't have a good sense of how much gold this is. I mean, could you carry that much gold home?
Yes, it surprised me. It came in a box the size of a small pizza, because they were 1 ounce
Really?
bars. Yes, 125
Oh, wow.
1 ounce bars.
Huh.
And it was maybe 10 pounds, not even 10 pounds probably. I thought, how am I going to carry all this gold?
Yeah, I'm picturing you needing a wagon or something
I know.
for this. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just in a small pizza box type thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Terrified, she drives home with this little box of gold and awaits further instructions. She doesn't have to wait long. 3 men will come pick up the gold tomorrow, she's told. Her instructions are to call Stephen right before they arrive at 2:30 and secretly keep him on speakerphone the whole time.
They're not going to know anything about this. They're just there to pick it up. So you don't need to ask them any questions. You can be polite, but don't really talk to them.
So they drive up to your house?
They drive up to the house. 3 men, they come in my house. They open the box on the floor of my living room and count. They were polite. They didn't say hardly anything. They left with my money. And I remember thinking, they're walking out of my house with half of my life savings. But it's okay, because I've got Stephen on the phone with me. I didn't need to ask them for ID, because I got Stephen on the phone with me. He's got me.
Right. And also, I mean, you expected them. This was all part of a plan that was coming, and it was all happening at exactly the right appointed time and everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. Okay, so one of your feelings was, wow, they're walking out with half my life savings, but were you relieved that it was over?
Not really. I really didn't have a sense of anything like that, because I felt like I was still in the middle of it. I was glad to have the gold out of my house.
I'm sure. It's now been a couple of months since that first phone call, and this major transaction is now finished, but Lori's unease is only growing. And you haven't told a soul any of this?
Not a single soul.
That seems so isolating.
It was very isolating. And I would notice things like cars that would slow down in front of my house, or, things that I wouldn't have thought twice about.
Think identity theft won't happen to you? Think again. There's a new victim every 3 seconds in the US, over 15 million this year alone. LifeLock alerts you to identity threats you could miss, even when you monitor your credit. If you become a victim of a stolen identity, your US-based restoration specialist will work to fix it. Join now. AARP members save up to 44% with promo code AARPLL13 at lifelock.com, or call LifeLock at 844-506-4200. AARP receives a royalty fee for the use of its intellectual property. These fees are used for the general purposes of AARP. After handing over the gold, she's hoping for good news from Stephen. Maybe that was enough to get this all over with. But
so once we did that, we had kind of a lull in the action. And we talked every day still. And he said, I'm working on your case. He would call and ask me a question now and then, or, about finances or what have you. And then he says, Lori says, we got to get that the rest of your money, whatever we can get, we need to secure, because I'm having a really tough time.
He's having a really rough time clearing her name. So she's told she'll have to empty the rest of her Roth IRA.
So it was the same process. Same thing happened. So I went and got the second batch of gold. And then the same day, 2 guys came to pick it up.
But 2 different guys.
Yes. 2 different guys. Yep.
And now when they leave, you think now they have all the money I've ever saved.
Yeah, they have everything. And I had about $2,000 to my name.
Days go by. 2 weeks go by. And there's no news. But then the call she's been waiting for comes.
I think it was a Tuesday morning. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning and I'm still asleep. And he says, we did it. We got you cleared. You're good. All you have to do is go to your Pataskala police station. They've got your paperwork. They'll take care of everything. You can now tell the story. Move now. So, okay, yeah, woohoo. So I grab my paperwork and I go to the police station.
So you go up to the front desk, the dispatcher, right?
Yeah, I go to the front desk. No, it wasn't the dispatcher, just a receptionist type girl.
Oh, okay.
And I told her who I was and that they were expecting me and I'm to speak to officer so-and-so. And she said, well, he's on vacation this week. Yeah, exactly. And so she was so sweet. She called people. They didn't know anything about this. So I called Steve and I said, what's going on? They don't know anything. He said, okay. He said, I'm sorry. He says, you need to go to the Licking County Auditor's office and ask for so-and-so. And I'm thinking, the auditor's office? Why in the heck would I go to the auditor's? Well, whatever. I'll go.
So she drives a half hour to Newark, Ohio, and talks to someone at the front desk there.
So she says to me, I don't have any clue what you're talking about. She says, all we do here is payroll for the county. And she said, let's go talk to the deputy director or the deputy auditor. So we did. And so I know at this point I'd been given the green light to tell the story. So I sit down in his office and she's there with us. She was so kind. They both were. And started to tell the story. And as I'm telling it out loud for the first time in 2.5 months, the red flags start flying. And I realized something was very, very wrong. And the woman said, I think I need to call the sheriff's department. And I said, and so I'm still brainwashed. I said, no, please don't do that. Don't do that. I'll find out what's going on. And I left.
Lori feels like something is terribly wrong, but part of her is still hoping there is some mistake, and she doesn't want anyone to call the police. Instead, she calls Stephen.
And I said, by this time I was mad and using a lot of full 4-letter words. And I said, what is going on? And he said, I'm in a meeting, the very last meeting for you. I'll call you back in a minute. Go on. I said, I'm going home. He said, that's fine. So I leave, and about 5 minutes later, I'm driving home. My phone rings, and it's a strange phone number. And there's a strange male voice that says, you've been scammed. So I scream, I hang up the phone, and I call 911.
Lori isn't sure who that last caller was, but she suspects it was Stephen, using his real voice finally. that he had been putting on a fake accent for the past 2.5 months. And when she calls 911, she can hardly speak. The 911 operator helps.
And she said, there'll be a deputy waiting for you at your house. She said, you need to calm down because I'm crying hysterically and screaming. And she got me calmed down to where I could drive safely. And there's a deputy here when I got home.
I can't imagine what that moment was like for you.
It still puts me in knots.
When she gets home, as promised, there is a detective waiting there for her.
That poor guy, he was so wonderful. He was so patient with me because I was hysterical. I had called my ex-husband and he came running. And I thank God for that because he was my voice of reason and helped me get through that statement and interview with the deputy. The deputy, I told him everything, and he said that Licking County has a victims advocate program, and they have a victims advocate who helps people like me. He said, I'm going to call this guy and see if he can come over. So the victims advocate came, and he said, I'm going to be the guy that's going to help you day to day get through this.
The victims advocate brings out a U.S. Secret Service agent the next day.
Deputy Woodward and the Secret Service agent come and show up at my door, and I said, guys, I need ID. And
Good
so
for you.
they were of course obliged. But they came in, and the Secret Service agent was really helpful. He said, we're pretty sure this is Chinese organized crime. And that scared me even more.
Yeah.
And he said, you're a victim here. He said, there's no need to be embarrassed or ashamed, which I was, and I still am. And he said that the same group has gotten a pharmacist for over $800,000. They got a professor for $1.2 million, and they got a narcotics agent.
Oh my God.
So they are good. They are very, very good. And so that helped, if due to the circumstances. But
I'm sure, yeah. But at the same time, what message did they give to you that day about your money?
he said that the chances are I'd never see it.
Had that reality hit you?
Yeah, I knew
yet?
I'd never see it.
But you are now sitting looking at, you have a couple of $1,000s to your name.
Right. Yep.
God.
So thank God for Licking County and all the programs that they have. I've been able to get a lot of assistance.
At this moment, Lori has only a couple of $1,000s left to her name. It's terrifying. Okay, so if you've heard a lot of Perfect Scam episodes, you know many of them end right there. The money is stolen, and the banks and law enforcement can't get it back. Well, today, dear listener, we have quite the surprise ending for you.
And then about a week later, Deputy Woodyard calls and he says, "You're not going to believe this, but we got 2 guys and we got half your gold."
What comes out of your mouth?
Oh my God, how much? He said it's the second batch that they picked up, that the 2 guys picked up. He said they were arrested, or they were stopped in Oklahoma by an alert deputy who thought that things were looking a little fishy. They had a suspicious vehicle APB out on their vehicle anyway. And he had reason to search, and he looked in the back, and there was your box of gold with your receipt in it.
This was like 2 weeks after the fact?
Yes. Yes.
They're like driving around with your gold?
They were driving around. Apparently, they went to the East Coast and then headed west. And so it seemed very odd that a plain white van with 2 men was driving through Oklahoma in a rented vehicle.
Yeah, this is super weird.
They also found drugs in the vehicle.
Yeah. I mean, that's a crazy story.
Yes, it is. And it's like divine intervention or something. I don't know.
So how much was half the gold?
That batch was 240,000.
So this is life-changing information. Right?
Yes. It put me back on my feet to some extent.
Life-changing information. She's had almost everything stolen from her. And then $240,000 reappears. Not quite right away, but almost. It's not a matter of you just driving down to the station and getting your gold, though, right?
Right. So,
how'd that work?
But they were really working hard to get it back to me quickly. They had to process it through Oklahoma. The Oklahoma people law enforcement had to work with Licking County law enforcement to coordinate an exchange of the gold. They had to work out how they were going to get it here. Deputy Woodward said, he said, I may have to fly out there and drive it home. They could ship it, whatever. But as it turns out, they did end up shipping it home about,
Wow.
must have been about 2 weeks later after it was all processed. And then once they got it here, the judge who was on the case was very, very compassionate, and he was okay with just having pictures of each individual bar as evidence as opposed to the real gold to go to trial. So I got the real gold back. I went back to the company I bought it from, and they bought it back from me.
And I'm going to guess that you lost a little bit through fees and whatnot, right?
I did not. They did not charge me any fees.
I'm glad to hear that.
I lost about $100 just because the value had dropped just a hair.
And, by the way, the man in the ball cap that she thought might have been conducting surveillance on her, well, he was just a regular customer of the store. Okay, so now, I'm assuming you then go back to your financial advisor.
Yes. And he said to me, Lori, he said, I knew something was going on and I knew it was going to be bad. But
that must have been a very hard conversation.
It was. Like I said, we've known each other for 20 years. And there was a lot of, but he was so cool about it. And so, I mean, he was giving me all kinds of ideas, and he helped me kind of nurture the idea of telling the story once everything was done. And I knew the second day after I got that dreaded phone call that I had to tell the story.
With Lori's help, the two men who were driving around with her second batch of gold are prosecuted, eventually plead guilty, and are sentenced.
Yeah. 2 years in prison, 2 years monitored probation and restitution. And these two guys have nothing. They're just mules. They're just mules. They have nothing.
So I can hear it in your voice. This resolution isn't really satisfying to you.
It's not a resolution to me because they didn't do it. They're not the ones who did it. They're just mules. They were just doing what they were told. My brother asked me that same question. He said, so do you feel a sense of closure? I said, absolutely not. This is Chinese organized crime. This has multiple layers. And my detective and Secret Service and FBI as well said the same thing.
So somewhere out there is somebody doing this very same thing to someone else still, right?
I'm aware of 4 other people in 4 other states. And I know there's more that they're not telling me.
Yeah, of course.
And those are the people I want to reach.
So that's why Lori agreed to speak with us.
I would love to be able to start some kind of a support group, or, I mean, just anything, because I had a couple of people say to me, well, when you get phone calls like that, you need to, hang up and verify and da-da-da. Well, with all due respect, I don't need to hear that, because you're not in my shoes and you didn't experience what I experienced, and the fear factor that was immediately in place on that first conversation.
It is some terrible human impulse to say exactly the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time to someone like you.
Right.
I mean, God. Because somewhere underneath that, it's communicated, no, you were kind of stupid.
Right, exactly. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But see, the thing is, what people don't understand is, Bob, that these guys didn't do what we've all been trained and made aware of, how to respond to something like this. They never asked me for personal information. And that's how they train us. You hear it on the news all the time. Never give out any personal information, nothing of any kind. Well, I didn't, because they never asked me. They went for the jugular from the get-go.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Until you've had this experience, you don't actually know what it's like. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Like I said, I'm getting assistance, and I'm looking for a job, which is really, really difficult in a lot of ways, emotionally and psychologically, and trying to, keep my head in the game and try and turn this into something that's going to help somebody. But I'm doing okay. Just trying to find a job.
But you still look over your shoulder sometimes, you said, right?
Yeah, I do. And It's the other day, as a matter of fact, I had somebody stopping at the end of my driveway, and I couldn't figure out, I automatically lock the doors because I'm the type of person I love to have my windows and doors open. And I just kept an eye on it. I was just about ready to call 911 when they pulled away. I think they were just talking on the phone or something. But that kind of thing really unnerves me. I'm now on the sheriff's department regular route, so they patrol by here often. I see them frequently, different times of the day and night.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it is. It really makes me feel better. And they honk and wave, which is really cool. Yeah.
You're on a first name basis with them all.
I feel like I am. I mean, I even have an up close and personal relationship with the canine unit and Aries, the dog.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they've been great.
What is it that you want people to really know and to learn from? I mean, we're clearly anxious to talk to us, which I'm really, really grateful for. But what is it you want people to hear?
I just want people to know that there are no limits to what people will do, and verify, 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 no matter what they throw at you, no matter what. If it's a phone call, you can always hang up and call the cops. If it's I just can't stress enough that if something sounds, even if it doesn't sound suspicious, but if it sounds scary, if it sounds wrong, verify it, check it out, hang up, call the cops. I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd never answered the phone.
And we really have to stress the part of this story that is most alarming to me. Having money stolen is one thing, but
the fact that they came in my home, the Secret Service agent said that that's the first time he had ever heard of them actually coming into a residence. That scared me to death when he said that.
It scared Lori to death. And this kind of crime in which criminals come into victims' homes is scary enough and becoming common enough that the Social Security Administration recently issued a warning titled simply, "Don't hand cash off to agents." That warning reads, in part, the Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General is receiving alarming reports that criminals are impersonating SSA OIG agents and are requesting that their targets meet them in person to hand off cash. SSA OIG agents will never pick up money at your door or in any type of exchange. This is a scam. Never exchange money or funds of any kind with any individual stating they are an SSA OIG agent. This new scam trend introduces an element of physical danger to scams that never existed before. Here to talk more about that very serious-sounding warning is AJ Monaco, who is Special Agent in Charge with the Major Case Unit at the Social Security Administration's Office of the Inspector General. He says he's seen victims of the same scam Lori suffered who've had as much as $2.7 million stolen from them.
It's really soul-crushing to see that. What you come to realize is just how absolutely devastating this is for somebody, particularly somebody who's saved their entire lives. They may have a pension, they may have a 401k, and they've given all that up, and they have virtually no ability, no means to make that up again. It's absolutely horrifying to see that happen to a human being. So if you have any sort of compassion or think of relatives in your lives, just so that's always my first reaction is to have empathy, to have compassion for those that have gone through this.
AJ was anxious to talk with us about that "don't hand off cash to agents" warning. Let me just get it as clear from you as I can. Will someone from Social Security show up at your house and ask for cash?
Absolutely not. And I think that's really probably the more important point is that law enforcement of any sort, one, they're not going to come to your house and they're going to, if they threaten arrest, if they threaten a search warrant or any sort of threat of enforcement action is just not going to happen. Typical of the U.S. government, any sort of interaction you're going to have is going to take place over a time. There's going to be lots of back and forth, typically by letter, maybe by email, but typically by letter, maybe by you signing into your My SSA account, corresponding or sending an email that you initiated, but it's pretty rare that the Social Security Administration is going to need to contact you for anything. It's more commonplace that you would find something wrong before the SSA does. So that's the one part of it. And just absolutely no agent, no Social Security Office of Inspector General agent or even member from SSA is going to come to your house and demand money.
But having a situation where someone does come to your house could be dangerous, right?
Absolutely dangerous. And that's why we put the alert out back in March, is because we were starting to see this trend. We saw it in some of our complaints. I actually talked to some victims. And really what my first reaction was is, if you find yourself in that situation, my recommendation is always, please call 911. Please get in touch with your local police, because nobody should be coming to your house. And that just elevates the danger, the threat to you physically more. There's a huge potential for some sort of physical altercation.
And there has been one prominent case of a mule showing up at a scam target's home and the incident turning deadly.
Something went very wrong, and a victim who understood that he was being scammed actually shot one of these couriers. And the courier was just a Lyft driver who was doing a job for somebody, for a scammer, and didn't really even know, but actually shot and killed somebody. So the potential for bad things to happen when mules are meeting in person with victims, I think, just exponentially rises.
What's really going on here? Why are criminals showing up at victims' homes?
We think the reason they're doing that is because, they're trying to get outside of necessarily the view of cameras. And so how much better to come into somebody's house where there's probably not a camera inside, and to be more convincing in person, because a lot of times people will be suspicious that they're not talking to an actual agent. So the person shows up and maybe they have fake credentials or whatever it is, that they're much more convincing in person.
I was wondering if maybe at least one reason for that might be that the gift card people and the cryptocurrency people are getting a little bit better and making it a little bit harder to transfer money that way, or am I being too optimistic?
No, I think that's right. One of the things that we're seeing, and this is credit to the American regulatory, the financial institutions and the regulatory system, is that crypto leaves behind a very strong trail. And it may lead overseas, but nonetheless, it leaves behind a trail, and we can follow that trail in law enforcement and banking. So the anti-money laundering, the financial crime regulatory scheme, is catching up with the technology. So I think that's why you're seeing this kind of what's old is what's new. This in-person con is hard to track. If there's no camera, there's no trace. If somebody goes and buys gold, or buys, I guess, a cashier check, but gold or gift cards, and then hands them over in person, and then the mule takes off, never to be seen again, it's really, really hard for us to find them.
They sort of get off the grid that way, right?
They do. That's right. That's right.
Well, one of the things that's striking about Lori's story is that they asked her to buy gold. Then she handed the gold over to a criminal. How unusual is that?
It's becoming more usual, and I think gold is very safe for them. I mean, for the same reason that we might buy gold, it's a very safe investment, hard to trace in many different forms. I guess you can turn it into other different forms. It's easily transportable. You can hide it in your luggage, easy to get out of the country, and it's worth the same thing in this country as wherever else you bring it overseas.
Lori was the victim of what's known more generally as a government impersonation scam. That's just what it sounds like. Criminals pretend to be a government official, say someone from the IRS, and intimidate victims into sending money. Lately, the Social Security Administration has been invoked in these kinds of scams. That change began before the pandemic, but peaked in 2021 when the SSA got a stunning 700,000 complaints about it. There are fewer now, but still, big money is involved.
Just to give you some context, last year, at least the numbers known to the FTC were over $600 million in loss. Wow. Just for 2023. So, I think what the academics have shown us is that, 10% report, maybe a little more, 15%. So you can really move the decimal place from 660 million, I think is what it was, really move the decimal place over one spot. That's going to be, in the billion, 6 billion, 10 billion, somewhere in the billions just for government imposter scams.
I mean, that's like a Fortune 500 company.
It's a Fortune 500 company.
Why are government impersonation scams so persuasive? Well, one reason is that people have heard of organizations like the IRS or the SSA, and maybe they are already a little bit intimidated when they think they're hearing from them. But technology helps too.
Another reason is the proliferation, particularly in the last 6 to 8 years, of technology that allows just the ease at which criminals can spoof a phone number, which means that they can purport to be from the Social Security Administration or from some other entity. So it appears on your phone that it legitimizes the phone call, at least in the minds of the potential victim. So that's using the voice over IP technology, which allows not only just the spoofing of phone calls very easily, but also allows just a mass number, kind of on an industrial scale, to reach more and more people, millions millions and millions of people, which would have been virtually impossible when it was an analog phone system. So technology is certainly part of that as well.
Lori certainly mentioned it to me, and so many victims do. When the phone says Social Security Administration, I mean, that's very persuasive.
It is. And you want to believe that. You want to believe your government, is doing the right thing, and they're calling you and like, oh, there's a problem here. That's the problem, is they take advantage of that. They're master manipulators of that kind of good-hearted American, wanting to believe the fact that we're not all skeptical and cynical people. We want to be happy people and believe that our government is doing the right thing.
The latest crime trend AJ sees is something he calls a hybrid scam. It might start out with a reference to a well-known commercial company, but quickly moves to a government impersonation scam. Criminals text to say there's a problem with your Amazon or your Walmart account,
which many people have, so it seems plausible, and you answer the phone or you answer the text message or a bank or something, and that person, that scammer, purports that you have some sort of problem with your identity that needs to be fixed by the Social Security Administration. So it's really a hybrid scam. It turns out, whether it's a tech problem or whatever it is, then I'm going to transfer you over to this agent over here who's going to take care of your problem, and now we've introduced you into the Social Security scam through the back door, if you will, and they seem to be very successful and very believable that way.
Government officials like AJ are trying to nab as many criminals as they can. But
as one prosecutor said to me at some point in 2021, she said, we're not going to prosecute our way out of this. So what other thing can we do? And that's why we're very happy to come on and talk to you to do various forms of print and all sorts of media, television. We put things out. Our communications folks that are really good about posting things. We put out scam alerts. We're doing, for a small agency, I think we do our share of trying to get the word out about these scams, and to work with the Federal Trade Commission and other law enforcement partners and other communications people to get the word out, because the only way we're going to disable this success of these fraudsters is really going to get the word out and make this so quick understanding of what's happening so commonplace that everybody gets it. And I like to say, like, if everybody remembers the Nigerian scam, the email, which now seems implausible, but we want to make it that common where somebody looks at something and goes, that's a scam. That's the best way to prevent this and stop it.
Well, I mean, that took us maybe 20 years, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the truth.
So for now, AJ has a quick shorthand way to spot potential scams and to protect yourself from them. He calls this list the 4 Ps.
Every scam generally follows this 4P, method, or 4P way of thinking. And so the first one is somebody we use pretend, or somebody purports to be from a government agency, or purports to be from Amazon, or purports to be from, the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, which is my, local utility. Purports to be from somewhere, right? Somebody in authority that contacts you. And then the second P is that they give you some sort of problem. There's a problem. And then the third P is, so they've got to put pressure on you before you realize that this is a scam. So they've got to get you into this mindset that you've got to do something, and there's a time limit. So they apply this pressure, and they're very good at it. So the fourth P is pay. And it generally is going to mean that the scammer isn't successful until he's able to get you to get some sort of money, put some sort of money out into his hands.
The 4 Ps: pretend, problem, pressure, pay. That's handy. But here's an even quicker shorthand to remember.
If you find yourself in a call for some reason, or you find yourself engaged, just recognize when somebody's pressuring you to give money or to give up your personal information, just to kind of emblazon that in your mind that, boom, just get me out of this. I've got to hang up. I've got to get myself out of this.
I've got to get myself out of this. Just hang up. Just stop texting or emailing. And share stories like the one you've heard today about dangerous in-person meetings on The Perfect Scam.
And spread the word, and listen to this podcast, listen to the great articles on Fraud Watch Network. There's just some really good information out there that can help keep the most vulnerable population. This will keep them safe. I think it's really going to be a community effort, a national effort, and we just need to keep bringing awareness to this issue, because it really is just that serious.
It really is that serious. And you can stay informed on the latest scams with a free bi-weekly newsletter by email and text. Go to aarp.org/watchdogalerts to sign up. For The Perfect Scam, I'm Bob Sullivan. If you have been targeted by a scam or fraud, you are not alone. Call the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. Their trained fraud specialists can provide you with free support and guidance on what to do next.
Our email address at The Perfect Scam is theperfectscampodcast@aarp.org, and we want to hear from you. If you've been the victim of a scam or you know someone who has, and you'd like us to tell their story, write to us. That address again is theperfectscampodcast@aarp.org. Thank you to our team of Scam Busters, Associate Producer Annalie Embry, Researcher Becky Dodson, Executive Producer Julie Getz, and our audio engineer and sound designer Julio Gonzalez. Be sure to find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. For AARP's The Perfect Scam, I'm Bob Sullivan.